Hi, I'm Christina and this is a book review of The Book Eaters by Sunyi Dean. So this is a fantasy novel. It was published in 2022 and it's her debut novel. I first heard about this one when it was nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards in 2022 in the fantasy category. And I have to say that I absolutely love the concept of this book, but overall I was a little bit disappointed by it. So let me just tell you about the premise of this story. So our main character is called Devon. She's Devon Fairweather and she is a book eater. So book eaters are this race of humans who consume books. So they don't have any food or drink, but they can consume alcohol, and basically they eat books, and by doing so they just gain all the knowledge of those books. So in the UK, there are 6 families of book eaters. They're all relatively wealthy. They're all very kind of isolated and they're very secluded from human society. Now, one thing about the book eaters is that they have fertility problems in their race. So there are very few children born, and the children that are born, there's very few girls. And the reason for this is the women in the book eater society have fertility issues in the sense that they can have about 2 or 3 children max, and then they will enter the menopause. So to deal with their kind of decline in their species, there are marriage acts in place. So a girl will be married twice to a man in one of the other 6 families, and she will produce a child, hopefully, for this man, and then she'll be with the child for 3 years, and then once the child turns 3, she will leave the family, never to see her child again, and the child will be raised by the father and the family of the father. So the girls in this society are treated just absolutely terribly, and they're also kind of kept in a way that they don't really gain much knowledge. So our main character, Devon, she's only allowed to eat fairy tales. So obviously the only kind of knowledge that she gains from eating them is just fairy tales. She doesn't get any practical knowledge of how to live in the world, how to survive outside of these families. So they make sure that their girls are essentially trapped in this society and there's no other alternative for them, essentially, because they don't have any knowledge to escape and they couldn't survive by themselves. Now, another interesting thing about book eaters is that they can't actually write. They physically cannot write anything down. They cannot text anything. It's just something they physically can't do. And obviously the idea is maybe if they could write themselves, then they could consume their own books. So that's just something that they are physically incapable of doing. So another part of the book eater world is that some of the children born are not actually book eaters, they are mind eaters. And what that means is they cannot consume books in the same way that other book eaters can. They can only consume minds. Now, they would generally consume the minds of humans because they look at humans as a lesser type of being, but they can also consume the minds of other book eaters. So obviously they are seen as a danger to society and they are very much feared by the book eaters and hated by them in a lot of instances. And for a long time they used to just kill the babies who were mind eaters. But in the kind of more modern times of this book, what they do is they keep the mind eaters controlled with this drug, which is produced by one of the 6 families called the Ravenscars, and it's a drug called redemption. So when you take this drug, you will not need to consume minds anymore. You can consume books, and that's how you can survive, but you will always have the hunger inside you that you want to consume minds, and that will never go away, but you will not physically starve to death. So that's kind of the setup of all of that. And our main character, Devon, is 30 years old at the start of the book, and she has a son called Kai who is 5 years old, and he is a mind eater. So I won't tell you any more about the plot particularly. Oh, just one more thing actually with the mind eaters. Now that they don't kill those children, they now send them away, and they're kind of like a police force idea. So they have a group of people called the Knights, and they're the ones that kind of make the marriage pacts between the families, probably kind of a self-serving idea. They definitely gain something from it, but they're trying to keep the lineage pure and just trying to prevent too much inbreeding, because there's so few families actually in the UK. They have to be very careful with who they marry and how they have children. And the knights have the mind eater children. They're called dragons. They're not physically dragons, that's just what they're referred to as. And they kind of use those dragons, those mind eaters, to kind of control through fear. So yes, that's the whole premise of the book, and I have to say I absolutely love the premise. I love the concept of book eaters and just gaining all of this knowledge and just the whole world. I think it's a brilliant idea, but I think the actual concept is a lot better than the execution of it itself. There are so many more things I wanted to know about this world, so many more things that I think could have been explored. So in terms of a fantasy novel, I think it's a very kind of surface level fantasy novel, and it doesn't go as deep into the fantastical elements as I was hoping for from a fantasy novel. And that's kind of what affected my enjoyment of it. I was sitting there thinking at one point, I think you could remove the whole book eater aspect from this story, and it is essentially the same story about a woman with a child who has to escape her family and is being persecuted. And yeah, I don't know if the book eater element is quite as vital, and I think that's such a shame, because I was going into this story hoping for a lot of fantasy, because I know it was nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards in the fantasy category. That's what was really the draw for me. So I think that's why ultimately I felt a little bit disappointed and a bit underwhelmed by the whole story. Another thing is that I wasn't particularly connected to these characters. I didn't find myself being connected to any of the characters in this story. They felt quite one-dimensional to me, and I don't think there was all that much character development. There was also a little love story in here. There's a kind of very quick sapphic romance, and I didn't really buy the relationship in the sense that there was no time for this relationship to evolve. They met, and then a couple of days later it felt a little bit quick, and I couldn't get behind the relationship. It didn't feel like high stakes, and at the end of the book there was some more kind of emotional scenes between this couple, and I just didn't feel anything, because I don't think the groundwork was set for me to really be connected to the characters or connected to the romance inside it either. And yeah, I don't think any of these characters particularly jump out to me. I don't think this is going to be very memorable for me, which is such a shame. I was really, really hoping to love this. And I think the other thing is there was just so much more about the world of the book eaters and where they came from that I wanted to know. So they have this kind of religion sense that they believe in the collector, and they think the collector is a person who has put them on this earth with humans, and their job is to collect information, which is obviously why they can consume books and also why they could consume minds. But it's such a tiny little aspect of the story, and I was so intrigued by that. I would love to have known so much more. And it's a possibility that perhaps it's an alien race or something, but none of this was fully explored. It was just like an idea that was dropped in, and then I just don't think it was explored fully, just to its fullest potential, essentially. So yeah, I was quite disappointed in this one, actually. So I think I'm going to give it kind of a low 3-star read, maybe more of a 2.5 stars. If you're really interested in reading the book, then obviously pick it up, but otherwise I don't think I would particularly recommend it. I was just underwhelmed overall, and just a little bit disappointed. I think maybe I was hoping for a very different type of book because it's been marketed as a fantasy novel. I was expecting a lot more fantasy, when really I think it reads more just like a contemporary kind of novel with like a tiny little bit of fantastical elements. So yeah, those are my thoughts on The Book Eaters. If you have read this book, I would love to know your thoughts on it down in the comments below. I'd love to have a chat to you about it. So thank you so much for watching. Please do like the video if you've liked it, and please do subscribe if you'd like to see more of me talking about books. I'll see you in my next one.